Believe it or not, it's 2024 and the red dot market has never been bigger. And while more competition benefits you as the consumer, it also means more plates, more optic cuts, more optics themselves, and more variations that you have to sift through when making a purchase. Welcome back to the Swampfox Optics YouTube channel, and today we are going over mounting your pistol red dots and some things that you might need to take into consideration while doing so. In 2023, we released not one, not two, but 3 pistol mounted red dots. The Sentinel II, Liberty II, and Justice II. Our focus was on taking our existing lineup of pistol-mounted red dots and improving them with not only the latest technology, but also everything we've learned about red dot optics in the past few years. With that being said, let's take a look at our new red dots and how to mount them. We're at the workbench, and there are only a few things that you need to get started. You need an optics-compatible pistol, the optic that you will mount to said optics compatible pistol, a couple of tools, we include these in our boxes, and then additionally, optionally, a torque wrench. You don't have to have a torque wrench, and if I'm being honest, I rarely use one, but it is certainly not the worst idea. Out before me today, I have a Liberty and Justice II. Those both share the RMR footprint, and a Sentinel II, which utilize the RMSC footprint. For firearms, today we're working with a Nomad Defense pistol, and that is essentially a Glock 19 Gen 5, and that includes the RMR footprint. And then I also have a Glock 48, and this uses the RMSC footprint. Before I go any further, if you're unsure what this footprint term is that gets thrown around a lot, what that refers to is the dimensions of the space that is cut into the slide that accepts the optic. Optic footprints can vary by length, depth, screw locations, recoil lugs, and so much more. There are a ton of options out there, so I would just verify that the optic that you've chosen fits the pistol you're using, or have your pistol milled specifically for the optic that you plan to use. If you are unsure on where to have that work done to have a pistol cut for an optic, stop by your local gun store and they can at least get you pointed in the right direction. Like I've already mentioned, today we will be working specifically with the RMR and RMSC style footprints. Starting with our Liberty II, we are going to make sure that our mounting surface is clean and that we have the right screws selected. The most common screw used for the RMR footprint is the 632, which is provided with your Liberty II. I can do a quick check by taking the screw and the gun without the optic and lightly thread this in to verify that it does thread in without any problems. And once I've done that, we are good to go. Start by taking your optic and lightly placing it on the surface of the slide in the optic cut. And then take your screws and gently guide them into the holes on each side of the optic. The screws that we include in our boxes have been prepped with a blue thread locker, but if the ones that you're using do not have any on them, we would recommend applying a small amount of purple or blue thread locker before dropping the screws into the spots. Using the tool that we provide in the box, begin to thread them in until they start to tighten. Before we start to tighten the optic down, we should verify that our screws aren't too long or too short. If they are too short, you wouldn't have been able to thread the screws into the slide through the optic. And if they are too long, you will have felt them tighten, but the optic itself isn't properly secured and still might move and wiggle on the gun. A good way to check this as well is to put the screws through the optic prior to the install. And while holding the screws in place, flip it over and check between 2 and 5 threads to be exposed. This should give you solid engagement with the threads, and it generally won't make them too long that you can't actually tighten the optic down. After all of that has been checked, feel free to start tightening the screws. I usually go until they start to stop, and then I go a quarter turn or a half turn more and call it a day. If you would like to use that optional torque wrench we mentioned earlier, 15 inch-pounds will do the trick. Moving on to our Sentinel II, the process will be almost identical, but with one added step. The Sentinel II utilizes a bottom-loading battery, and although we've caught some flack for that, it's a decision that we stand behind. The bottom-loading battery allows us to still use a 2032 battery as compared to the 1632 batteries found in the Liberty and Justice II, and the 2032 gives us a longer battery life in a form factor that is still small enough to fit on the RMSC footprint. The inherent downside to this, however, is an exposed battery, and while you might think that just screwing the optic on is enough protection, you still need some form of sealing to really make sure nothing can go wrong. We include 2 sealing plates in the box for this reason. The only difference between installing the Liberty II versus the Sentinel II is that you'll need to place the sealing plate between the optic body and the mounting surface on the firearm. While one of those plates is sufficient for sealing the optic, the second plate can also be used as a shim in the event that you're having screw length issues, which seems to be prevalent in the micro compact pistols. After you put the sealing plate on the mounting surface and then place the body of the optic on top of that, follow all of the same procedures of checking your thread engagement and torquing it down, and you should be all set. Once you've finished installing your pistol dot, you are ready to head to the range and start zeroing, but that'll be a topic for another video. I know we barely began to cover the license plate attached to the truckload of optic footprints and installation procedures, but I hope you can walk away from this video with some foundational knowledge on how pistol optic installation works and how to mount any of our second generation red dot optics. Leave a comment down below on what optics you'd like to have us cover in future Swampfox Optics videos, and thanks for watching.